Hi, welcome to Smith and Grazzy. It's that time of year again. We're going to announce the area test pieces for 2025. Along with me, I've got my compatriot Sandy Smith and our special guest on this occasion, yet again, Mr. Duncan Beckley, MBE. So welcome, Duncan.
Hi, how you doing,
mate.
everybody?
Okay, good.
So Sandy, it's the first time I've seen these pieces, and this programme is going to be released on Saturday morning. I shall keep my mouth shut until Saturday morning, but basically we'll run through the test pieces, what they are, from fourth to championship, if you don't mind.
Yeah, no problem. So just to put you in the picture, I think the meeting that we decided these, was it in May or June, Duncan? I can't remember. We were online.
I think it was in June.
I think it was in June as well.
Before we go any further, Sandy, as a group, we were looking for pieces what were not the norm. In other words, the same old, people would say, composers.
Mm-hmm.
We wanted to try and move away from them.
Yeah,
we didn't want to move. Yeah, we didn't want to move too far away, because I think it's really important that we don't forget our brass band roots, you know, of what makes a band sound good. And we feel that all these pieces, what have been chosen this year, make a band sound good.
Yeah, they do. They've got the opportunity for a band to make all the right noises. And again, and Duncan, we've talked about this, and with the other members of the panel, that we're looking for stuff that is going to help improve all bands in all the sections. And it's going to be, you know, music that they can get their teeth into, that gives something just that little bit different. But we did go out of our way this time, I think, just to try and widen, you know, the scope. Not that we've, you know, been very narrow anyway, but we did widen the net slightly. So if I start with it, the fourth section piece is called I, Daedalus by Andrea Price. So this was a new piece. I spoke with Andrea in very early January this year. I think we did a bit of a panel thing at the RNCM talking about test pieces and stuff, and we got chatting, and she had something on the go. Anyway, she did a bit of work on it, and then she sent it in to me to have a look over and such, and then pass it on to everybody else. So I think, rather than sort of go into huge detail off the top of my head, Andrea has written a brilliant sort of program note on here. So if I just read that out, that'll give you an idea of what this piece is all about. Daedalus is a prominent figure in Greek mythology, renowned for his exceptional skills as an inventor, craftsman, and architect. Daedalus symbolizes human ingenuity and epitomizes the complex relationship between human creativity and its consequences. His myths often explore themes of innovation, pride, and the perilous balance between human ambition and natural limits. After designing the labyrinth for King Minos, Daedalus and his son Icarus were imprisoned in the tower in Crete. Daedalus fashioned wings from feathers and wax, and father and son set out on their ill-fated escape. So that's the famous story where they fly too close to the sun, and the wax melts the feathers and down they come. So it's in 5 sections. The first one is called Inventor in the Tower. The second is called Father and Son. The third is called Flight and Fall. The fourth section is Lament, and the fifth section is Seeker of Knowledge. So the whole duration of the thing is 10 minutes. And as you know, Andrea is a percussionist. She played at Black Dyke. I think she's still there. She was certainly there when I was at Black Dyke. And Simon, you know a little bit of Andrea's background, don't you?
Yeah. First met Andrea, must be over 20 years ago. She was a pianist, and she came to YBS and started having a bit of a dabble on percussion. And to say she's a quick learner is unreal. She's such a bright young lady. And she regularly tried little pieces out on YBS.
Right.
They were always good. And I've got to say, I've had a look at the score for this, and you've pulled off a cracker here. This is really good writing for that level of banding.
Well, like Sandy said early on, Sandy and I had listened to clips of this, and it has a story to it, which I think lower section bands like. It's a brand new piece, so we're giving something totally new to it.
Yeah.
You know, one thing what bandsmen always say in the lower sections, well, I hope there's a tune. Well, there are many tunes to this, you know, and it's harmonically interesting for all the players. It's well structured for a lower section band, and the percussion writing is really, really sensible. But I suppose you would expect that from a top percussionist like Andrea.
Well, if I just read out what she's written about the percussion requirements. So there are 2 percussion parts. Percussion 1 has timpani, cowbell, tempo blocks, and glockenspiel. And percussion 2 has drum kit, bass drum, which is optional, and a tam-tam, which again is optional. But the interesting thing is she's written this extra note. She says, for any bands fortunate enough to have a third percussionist, the cowbell, tempo blocks, glockenspiel, bass drum, and tam-tam can be played by an additional player using the percussion 3 part included. There is no additional material. So basically what she's saying is you can split. She's already done this for you with her being a percussionist. She's written a third percussion part which splits the parts up, and they can use, so there's nothing extra. You're not being asked to play anything extra, but it's just divvying up the parts in such a way that 3 people can play it if you happen to have 3, but it's perfectly capable of being played by 2 people.
So what you're saying is then if a band's got 2 percussionists, they can manage it all. If they happen to be very lucky and have 3, it's the same part.
It's the same stuff. Yeah, it's not extra. There's not extra stuff.
How sensible is that?
Well, I mean, but that's coming from, you know, a damn good percussionist, you know, who's also a damn good composer. I was just intrigued again listening to it, how interesting it is with everything melodically, harmonically as well. We've often said this, that sometimes these lower section pieces can become a bit, I don't know, basic harmonically. It's not. It's really interesting. There's loads going on. Everything is sensible, but there's opportunity for everybody to shine. Loads of little sectional passages where everybody can have a go. I think Jock Thompson last year, I think, was a great piece. I think this is just as strong, different type of piece, but just as strong in a different way. I think it's going to go down a bomb. I think it'll be really well received.
It's certainly good to listen to as well. It's not just a contest piece. It's really good to listen to.
Yeah.
So well done, Andrea.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know people will make a little bit about Andrea being female, etc. That in no way sort of influenced us in the slightest. It was by far the best piece we had, and that was it. Basically, wasn't it, Duncan? It just stuck out like a sore thumb.
It stood out by a mile.
Yeah. So
what's a big point for me that I've noticed, that is 2 new pieces in 2 years for the 4th section.
Yeah.
That's really good.
Yeah, I think it's fine. I think it will go down well. I think there's plenty of interest in it, and it's a totally different style, obviously, to Jock Thompson. But yeah, new piece. So that's the fourth section one. I think it'll go down really well. The third section one is called Arkansas by Jacob DeHaan, which
Now,
again, go on.
Well, this piece for me, I think this is a great piece in the sense of it's like a new idiom, even though this piece was written. I'm not too sure. It's not a new piece. I don't know when.
I've got written down from the score. It says the 2009 Dutch Championships. It was written for.
But very much a really modern style. I think it does need what I call strong percussion in the sense of, I'm not talking about people, flashing around. I'm just talking about that strong rock beat where you've got this from time to time. But very good to play. Very good to play.
Just listening to it again for this podcast, I mean, there was a couple of things struck me. Was that it's full of big tunes. It's that big sort of open air American type feel to it, slightly film music, but there's also some really exciting, fast material, so I think and again, the thing that struck me, Duncan, was when we were talking about this was that it's a good contrast to the stuff that we've used recently. So it is a total contrast to things like Chorale and Toccata that we had a couple of years ago, even Coronace from last year, which again, with a newish piece. I think this is a different style. I think it's very, very skillfully written. There are three movements which are almost not interlinked, but they're not big, huge gaps in between them. I think the scoring is brilliant. And I did notice that, again, in the second movement, it starts off with a lot of the cornets, maybe even the full section, muted. And then it finishes with a reprise of the same thing as recapitulation of that material. There's ample opportunities for soloists in it. And I just think it's a big, accessible piece for the areas in a slightly different style. And it is modern, without being weird modern.
And I think it's a big change, and I think the bands will like it. It's one of these pieces which I know will grow on people.
I remember the first time we sat listening to it, Duncan, you and I together, and within a minute we were thinking, we're looking at each other going, yeah, this is all right, this,
I'll tell you what I like about some of the European composers. You kind of get a little bit like a Baroque theme.
Yeah.
You get that little bit of Baroque theme through it. I also felt that in the Oliver Westby piece, what we're going to talk about next as well. But I just thought I'd like to bring that in because it's a bit of a European-y thing, I think.
That's not going back to the days of chorale and rock out, is it, Duncan? That sort of thing.
Well, I'll tell you what, it's interesting. Same composer.
Yeah, well, I mean, don't worry about it, folks at home. It's not chorale and rock out. It's proper good music. But I just think, again, it's slightly different. People are asking for more modern pieces. This one certainly has that feel. I'm not bothered about what the date it was written or whatever, but it's certainly in a more modern style. And again, and I know I keep going on about this, but it is so important. The scoring is absolutely immaculate, spot on. Accessible, but difficult enough to be tested, but not stupid enough to be stupid. So that was it. Anyway, you mentioned the second section one, Duncan. Do you want to tell them about that a little bit?
Okay, Oliver Westby's Friendly Takeover. Now, I've done a couple of Oliver Westby pieces, and this for me kind of moves away from it a little bit. It's a thing, you know. Some of Oliver Westby pieces, I'm not sure they're all audience friendly. This one is. I think this is been another great choice by the panel. It's user friendly in all ways. It tests the conductor a little bit. It's in a modern style. Once again, using your kind of rock themed percussion, you know, which I think is interesting for all. So yeah, once again, it's a test piece. It will test everybody, but very much in a modern kind of style. A bit different to some of Oliver Westby's pieces.
Yeah, there was something, again, re-listening to it for this. It struck me that there is a good test for conductors, because there are passages in it where the conductor has to maneuver the music along and excel through certain areas into a new tempo and things. There's plenty in it to test conductors. And I was also impressed by it struck me that there was one or two places where there were some really good dynamic build-ups within the music that'll take a bit of organising from the middle, and the whole band moving dynamically up through things and keeping really good balance and stuff like that. Again, you're right, loads to keep everybody interested. This does have 3 percussion, including timps, but there is the option of a 4th part. And I think this is, if you have 4, then you play this extra part. If you don't, it's optional. It's marked optional. So 3 percussion will do it. But I mean, that's one of the things. Where are we? We do get stuck with this. If you want modern music, it tends to have more percussion. So then, if we don't pick them because they don't have, you know, if we're picking music with less percussion, then we get criticised as, you know, you're always picking old music. So there's a balance thing, and a, you know, we're stuck between a rock and a hard place sometimes. And I just think that this, again, is so good. Again, the scoring is brilliant. And there's one thing that struck me also was that there is a slow central section, as there is with a lot of these pieces. There's a lot of chordal work in that for the full band, which I thought, yeah, balance, stuff like that, intonation, good practice for bands, balancing chords, voicing, stuff like that. So I think it's a cracking piece. Really good stuff. And I noticed in some of the discussions that have been going on recently that Oliver Westby was a composer that 1 or 2 people kept sort of badgering with, saying we should be picking some music by these guys. So here we go. There's an Oliver Westby piece, which I think, again, will go down well. There's plenty in it that's of interest, plenty to get your teeth into, exciting stuff, as well as melodic, you know, good, solid band playing as well. So I'm hoping this one will go down well as well, obviously.
You're coming on to the first section.
Yeah.
This was one of my... How can I put this? I used to listen to this incessantly when I was a youngster. And I always said to myself, if I ever join Black Dyke, I want to play this with that band. Anyway, I joined Black Dyke and I never played it. But it's a great piece. It's Introduction, Elegy and Caprice by Morley Calvert.
Yeah.
This is a cracking piece, this. You know, bands should not underestimate this piece.
It's a piece that I can't understand why it's not been played as much. You know, it was either the first or the second European.
It's the first. It was in 1978, Sandy.
Okay, there you go. All right, wasn't. Even I didn't play it that one. But it's a belter of a piece. And Morley Calvert was
I remember when we first started talking about this, And Sandy said, and it's just stuck in my mind, a neglected gem.
Yeah.
And it really is. You've never heard anybody talking about it at all. You know, it's really interesting that this has not in any way come to anybody's thoughts. You know, as panel members, we're looking for good quality music, and this really is a good test. You know, I thought High Peak was a good test, but I'll tell you now, this is going to be a good test. You know,
and it's a different style.
Yeah, and certainly for players.
It's got a really heartfelt middle movement, if I remember.
Yeah, it has, and there's some real pitfalls in that as well.
There is.
It's been quite interesting watching because all the rumour mill started, and they're all chipping in with ideas and that, and the usual spurious stuff, but nobody has mentioned this at all.
No.
And I've been getting badgered with private messages from friends and that, saying, "Go on, you can just tell me, I won't," you know, and they've been guessing things, but nobody has ever mentioned this.
No.
Sorry if you've been if you've actually messaged me and I've not even replied to you for about 3 or 4 weeks. There, I'm just trying to keep my powder dry. But I think this will be a bit of a surprise. It's a brilliant piece. It's so good.
You know, the end of that middle movement, SOP and rep players need to get in training. Yeah, because that note goes on for quite a while, doesn't it?
Yeah, so in that
is it a top movement, B flat for SOP?
Yeah, it's a written top B flat for SOP and a written E flat for the Repiano cornet, and they have to just come in cold, silent.
Yeah.
B on that long note, you know.
Yeah.
But it's the music is sort of gut wrenching, and you know the way that the harmony sort of grates and builds in that section, and then the last movement is just
fun.
Oh, it's just fun, yeah, and it's that sort of crisp, joyous music, you know, fast. It's not a huge big blow piece in as much as, you know, there's no big heroic endings and tam-tams and all that sort of thing. It's wispy, will-o'-the-wisp, fast, fleet-footed music. It was totally different than High Peak. But I just think it's totally neglected, and I don't understand why. And again, you know, I'm not bothered about when it was written. It's just a great piece. It deserves to be played out, and it's proper music by a proper composer.
He's written some good stuff.
The structure of it.
Molly Calvert's from a Salvation Army background.
Yeah.
And, from Canada, and he has written some seriously good music over the years.
Yeah, I remember a brass quintet piece he wrote, "Sweet from the Montenegrin Hills," and I'm sure, did he not write a Christmas piece or something? Is there a Christmas?
I think there is.
Yes,
there's something that is based on French and Canadian carols and stuff.
He wrote "My All Is at the Altar" for the Salvation Army. That's often played out. But like you say, Sander, this is just neglected. It's never been really used a lot. I've never seen it pop up at own choice contests anywhere.
Yeah, it's just a great piece, and I think there's plenty in it to test bands and conductors in the right way, as usual.
Yeah.
So that's Introduction to Elegy and Caprice, which I think will surprise a few people.
We move on to the championship section, and we can confirm it is Diversions by Derek Bourgeois.
Yeah.
Last used at the British Open.
Yeah.
Fairies used it at Albert Hall.
That was 86. That was the famous contest where, and this is one of the real pitfalls of the piece, the contest that Alan Wycherley basically, not say won it on his own, but it was one of those Jeff Whittam moments, you know, that which
he
was
really owned that
astonishing
stage
on that day. But again, it's one of those pieces that it doesn't give the opportunity for bluster or bluff or BS or whatever you want to call it, or overblowing. It's not that type of piece. It's a touch piece. It's a Yeah, there is none of that sort of stuff in it. The musical language is typical bourgeois, sort of tongue-in-cheek. The technical challenges are quite stern, but I think the crux of this piece is the middle movement. It's absolutely stunningly good. There's
Beautiful.
loads of sort of filigree solo things, well, almost flute-like things happening in the cornet and the soprano, especially. It's a big soprano part, and not in the way that people are used to nowadays. It's not screaming up on top D's and E's and stuff like that. It's, in fact, at the very end of the piece, it's the exact opposite. There's a soprano cornet solo towards the end of the second movement that starts reasonably high, but it works its way down and finishes up almost bare, with the soprano cornet holding a bottom A, I think it is.
No, I think it benches down to a bottom A. I don't think they hold it there, but
no, they don't. Right, okay.
But it's not a place where you would want to start dubbing a cornet in. It'll be very noticeable.
Well, this is one of the reasons, and we talked about this, Duncan, about because we were getting a bit cheesed off with all this part swapping and sort of hoodwinking, and it's all right saying that everybody does it, and I've noticed comments since the Open about well, everybody does it and it's just expected and all that. Well, to me, it's just this will be a test for soprano cornet players, and let's see how many of them will play the full gamut of the solos that are in this second movement. Going right up the filigree stuff that's high up and picking notes off way above the stave, and then going down to this sort of serene melody at the end, melancholy stuff. I would hope that the best bands will not fiddle with this and change it. If they do, I think it's just a sort of tacit admission that soprano players can't do this anymore. I hope they can, because I think
I'll tell you what, Sandy, at the British Open this weekend, the winning band, they were fantastic, but they were swapping parts.
Right.
And a major one was the tuba quartet at the beginning. I was obviously, as a tuba player, listening for it. And they had there were only two tubas on it. The others were euphoniums.
I just hope none of that sort of thing happens.
That's how they did it. To be fair to them, Duncan, they weren't the only ones. I spotted a lot of cheating going on there. But, that part, yes, it's high for double B and stuff like that, but it's not impossible. And to me, players at this level should be able to do this.
Yeah, I think there's ample space in this piece. It struck me very much like it will reward musical playing, and there's an emphasis on clarity and style in the piece. It has to be played with the correct character. It struck me very much like contest music. That it's one of those pieces where on paper it may look slightly straightforward, but I think the more you get into it, especially that middle movement, there's so much music in it. And then the outer movements are typical bourgeois, that sort of quirky, odd sense of humour, the sort of things he wrote, like that little piece, Whirligig, and the concertos that are, the dance of the War March of the Ostriches and all that. It's a bit like that. It's all a bit quirky. And I think there's tons and tons in it to give the best bands ample opportunity to shine. It'll be a clarity piece. There is no bluff and bluster in it. It's not that sort of piece. It has to be played. It is very much like contest music. It has to be clean. It has to be crisp. It has to be exciting but controlled. And there's no huge, big, blustery tam-tams and all that sort of thing in it. It's a light music piece. But I mean, again, all five pieces. And I think this is something again that these area contests rely on bums on seats through the doors when they do their areas. I remember I was down in Wales earlier this year judging the championship in first section, and Philip Morris said that it was the best attended areas they've had for ages because the pieces seemed to entice an audience in. So again, that was something we talked about, wasn't it, Duncan? We have to have audience-friendly stuff as well as band-friendly. So that's what we've tried to do. I think we've got 5 cracking pieces there.
You've got some good listening
but
here.
I will say, I will say, gentlemen, that there will be people out there who will think it's wrong. There will be people out there who think it's right.
Yeah.
So all I say is we keep trying. We keep trying to please everybody, knowing full well we won't. But regardless of what, we need it to be quality music.
Yeah, we do. And yeah, bourgeois,
Yeah. So guys, that's the announcement of the area pieces for 2025. I've only learnt of these today, and I've got to say to you all, congratulations. I love the thought of going to have a right good listen to some of these. And congratulations. And like Duncan says, some won't like it, some will.
One thing I'd like to say, Simon, is that to everybody who's going to be tackling these pieces for the areas, is please don't get yourself hooked on one particular recording. There are umpteen recordings of all of this music, with the exception of Andrea's piece. Obviously, it is absolutely brand spanking new. But there are ample recordings on YouTube and various other places from contest performances of these pieces over the years. Don't get hooked on one. You make your own interpretation, and don't just think, well, we've copied the CD version of X, Y, and Z, and that's the one they'll be looking for. I would like to think that adjudicators would have a bit more imagination than that and look at the score and stuff as well. But please don't get by all means listen to a variety of recordings, see what you can make of this music. So there we go. Just hope everybody enjoys them. I know they won't, but there we go.
Okay, so that's that announcement. The area pieces 2025 from Smith and Gressy. Tune in again soon. Thank you.